Hello there. Welcome to the Star Bros podcast. I'm your host Lamont, and we are going to be reviewing Attack of the Clones. It's going to be a very, very fun podcast. First off, joined to my left is...
Hi, I'm Roland.
How you been, Rolly?
I have been fantastic. So much Star Wars news this week. Really digging watching the films again and reviewing them. It's cool. Really excited to talk about Attack of the Clones.
So am I. And special guest on the show again, we have Ellen. Ellen, welcome back.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's very, very exciting to have you on, Ellen. We do appreciate your input as well on the show. I think it's good. I think these reviews actually work really well, having bouncing off each other, I guess. It's good discussion as well. So I like the three-way format we got going here.
So
I think it works well, yeah. All right, so let's get straight into it. Obviously, yep, we're reviewing Attack of the Clones Episode 2, released in 2002. That movie came out 17 years ago.
Wow.
That is actually nuts to think.
Yep.
It is.
Yeah, how time flies. All right, we're going to get straight into it. And Ellen, you'll be our first person to give your thoughts very quickly on what you thought of the film.
All right, first cab off the ranks. So, it's kind of hard. I don't know whether to look at this as a, standalone film or as a part of the series. I'm going to go from the point of view as a part of the series. So first off, a lot better than The Phantom Menace. Straight off the bat, the setup is way more exciting. There's way more interesting action sequences. There's some good banter between Obi-Wan and Anakin. Obi-Wan actually has a really good role in this film. The humor lands really well, and it doesn't drag as a whole. That was something that I said about The Phantom Menace, is that it got really painful to watch. This actually flows pretty well. You kind of get wrapped up in some of the action, especially that first sequence where they go after the bounty hunter. I love that sequence. I've loved it since I was a kid, and rewatching it was really awesome. The special effects also, amazingly, for a film that's 17 years old, holds up pretty well. Like, it looks dated, but it's still is visually interesting to look at. Other than that, the romance just, I think, really doesn't work. Star Wars can do romance, because when we were watching it, me and Roland watched it together, and I was like, oh, romance shouldn't be in Star Wars, and I kind of went on about that, and Roland was like, hold on a minute, they had a really good romance in the original, and that is between Princess Leia and Han Solo, and that works really well, and it's really simple. They just didn't write Anakin and Padme well at all. It was so awful and painful, and I hated it. Rewatching the film, I actually realized I enjoyed it a lot more than I remembered. Anakin wasn't that awful. He's pretty wooden. He's not great. Like, Hayden Christensen's not an amazing actor, but he shouldn't be stoned necessarily. Like, he's not the worst actor. So I kind of feel sorry for him after watching the film. There's this one scene after he's killed all the Tusken Raiders and he gets emotional about it. He was actually pretty good in that one scene. He actually performed well. The rest of it, he's pretty wooden. Otherwise, I'd say it's probably it's a decent film. It's not amazing, but I did still enjoy it.
Excellent.
Nice.
Very well said. Yeah. Rolly, please.
Actually, I insist.
You insist?
I insist. I'm a gentleman.
Okay, sure thing. I think this is probably I'm going through watching these films, I guess being critical about these movies, because every time I've sat down and watched these movies, I'm not very critical. I put it on as a bit of fun, but I went into this, and the more I look into it, it has a lot of issues for me. I would actually have to say I think I enjoyed The Phantom Menace more than the Attack of the Clones. I just think the major issues with this movie was definitely the script and direction. The direction of the characters like Padme and Anakin, and the whole scenes between them were very, very awkward. A scene that sticks out to me like a sore thumb is that scene where they're on Naboo. It's at night, and it's just like it looks and it feels like a really bad screen test audition. It doesn't land. The dialogue is very off. And I think I don't know whether to put it down to George Lucas's directing or Natalie Portman's horrendous acting in that scene, but it is absolutely shocking. I mean, just the way she says the line, she has no emotion in her face. There's just a lot of scenes like that. And made me realize that I actually just find Padme's character really quite annoying throughout the whole movie, which I've never really felt that before, but she really, really annoyed me. And I think touching on the special effects and the visual effects, the CGI characters haven't aged very well. Yoda looks absolutely terrible. He does not look good at all. I think the scene between Obi-Wan and his friend Dexter as well, that Dexter character looks shocking. What it made me realize too is I know obviously it was George Lucas and what he was trying to achieve was trying to digitally create as much as what he could. But I still think going with practical effects, practical costumes and whatnot could have actually done a favor for this movie. I think the trying to create CGI characters didn't land. Back then in the day it would have, but now given in the movie industry we're at, yeah, these characters don't look good at all.
Agree.
Yeah, and I'm just not really invested in this storyline of Padme having a target on her back, having to run away and hide. It just didn't really grab me at all, and yeah, it's not something I was really interested in. I've got the bad parts out of the way, but I do have some good things to take away from this movie as well. This movie introduced a really good new idea in the Star Wars universe, which was the fact that we had a Jedi Master who went rogue. That's Count Dooku. We've never seen that before. Like, we've always thought the Jedi were, were this sacred group of people. They all thought alike. But what we found out in this movie was that not every Jedi thought alike. None of them agreed, and some of them actually did leave the order. We learned that a little bit about Count Dooku. We also learned that in the scene on Kamino when Obi-Wan finds out a Jedi called Cypher Dyas goes rogue to create a clone army. What would have been really cool in this movie is if we actually delve more into that. Why did this Jedi go ahead and create a clone army? What's the reason for that? I know this stuff is touched on later in the Clone Wars series, which is really cool to see it in there, but it's something that I think could have been explained in this movie, touched on a bit more. These are the kind of parts that I found interesting. I know George Lucas is trying to set up a relationship between Padme and Anakin, and they got a lot of screen time for it. But, and I know he has to do that because that leads into episode 3. It just didn't land for me though. I think the Battle of Geonosis looked awesome. I think it still holds up today. I mean, that is a cool looking scene in cinema. The duel between Anakin and Count Dooku was very cool. Still don't know how to feel about that duel between Yoda and Dooku. But yeah, that about wraps it up for me.
Nice. Yeah. Strong points. Well said.
Thank you.
Great review.
Thanks.
It's much better than mine. I can't believe I have to follow you two. I did this to myself. Well, I'll start by saying I tried to watch this just as a film, and it carries with it a lot of baggage, but I tried my best to remove that baggage. First of all, I'll say that I enjoyed this way better than The Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace is a really horrible film the more I think about it. This is really cool. It starts off with some really fun dialogue between Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker. I think they've got good chemistry together. Obi-Wan is actually a character in this film. It occurred to me that Ewan McGregor does really nothing with him, isn't given the opportunity to do anything with him in The Phantom Menace. In Attack of the Clones, he's got that dry sense of humor. He's quippy, he's sarcastic, he's much more fleshed out. Ewan McGregor's allowed to make the character of Obi-Wan his own. The film's all the better for it. It spends a lot of time actually giving a bit of development to Obi-Wan. And a lot of the film is about Obi-Wan on his own side quest. And I found it really interesting and compelling the way Obi-Wan was trying to solve the mystery of Kamino and who has created these clones and why. And I enjoyed watching Obi-Wan go on that journey. Really, really loved that. I do think towards the end of the film, it gets like the Battle of Genesis. Hated that. That scene goes for way too long. It doesn't stand up. I don't really care about a bunch of droids killing a bunch of clones. It goes on for too long. It drags. All the character development stuff in this film was really good, with the exception of the romance of Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen, which is not good. terrible. Poorly written. Natalie Portman, like you say, who we know is a good actress, gives a really flat performance. She's painful and cringy to listen to. I actually think Hayden, and echoing what Ellen said before, hey, it's not Hayden Christensen's fault. I actually think he did pretty well in some of his scenes, and the scenes where he kills the village of the Tusken Raiders is really good. And when he's flipping out and he's acting like an adolescent who can't handle his emotions, he's perfect. When he's trying to be charming, it doesn't work because he doesn't have that type of charm and charisma. But yeah, it didn't make any sense to me in the film that all of a sudden Padme decides to turn around and say, I love you. That is not developed or earned in the film, so the romance just doesn't work. I see what they were trying to do, but maybe, I don't know, maybe in the cut of the film they had more scenes which developed it a bit better, but it just seemed really rushed on her end. But overall, loved it, really enjoyable. Mace Windu is a really cool character. He totally stole the scenes that he was in. Count Dooku was actually a far more interesting and compelling villain than I remember him being. I did actually pick up this time that he was a defected Jedi, and that scene where he's talking with Obi-Wan when Obi-Wan's been captured is actually really cool because it does introduce the idea that there were rogue Jedi that came up, and they might have had perfectly legitimate reasons for going away from the Order, and that is something that is shamefully not developed in the film. But as you say, it is explored a bit better in the Attack of the Clone series and other Star Wars fiction. But yeah, definitely a step in the right direction. Not perfect. Like I said, the end battle drags a bit, but yeah, the rest of it's cool. And the end lightsaber scene, I got to say, I really enjoyed it. It's a bit silly with Yoda dancing around everywhere, but it did, for some reason, have some Star Wars magic for me. Like when they have that slow motion scene of Yoda opening up his cape and revealing the lightsaber, and then he grabs, like, that is actually, it's funny. I had like, you're smirking right now as I'm describing it to you. I had that same smirk on my face when it happened. But yeah, it was good. Interestingly enough, George Lucas got a guy called Jonathan Hales to come in and write the screenplay. Jonathan Hales has not done any other Star Wars films since. He hasn't really done much at all, but he did do a bunch of the Young Indiana Jones series in the late 90s and early 2000s. But I think the film has a better flow and it never gets boring, and it moves on the way it does because of his input. I just wish he had perhaps been there for The Phantom Menace. But yeah, much better than I remember. Much better. And I think the CG holds up and the set design's really great, and all the Coruscant looks awesome. It's like we were talking about, it's like a cleaner version of the Blade Runner city. It's got the neon lights. It just looks really cool. And that whole chase sequence at the start, yeah, like you were saying before, Ellen, is just like amazing. Loved it, invested. The music's great. There's proper character development. We learn so much about Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker during the first 15 minutes of this film. Loved it. Oh, and it just made me more excited to see the Obi-Wan series.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree.
So I love this. I actually, and just to add to that, I think all your criticisms of this film, both of you, are 100% right. But this had some Star Wars magic in it for me that the first one didn't quite hit.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Also with the Padme-Anakin relationship, I think, you know, that moment that you mentioned, Roland, where she turns to him and goes, I actually do love you. I think it was meant to be when Princess Leia says, like, a similar thing, you know, when she says, I love you, and he says, I know. I think they were trying to have that epic moment before they died. But because they didn't build it up in The Phantom Menace, and there was no interesting romance between them as kid, or Anakin, you know, fawning over this older, awesome, you know, teenager. In the second film, you're just kind of like, oh my God, this is out of nowhere. So if they had have developed it better in the first film, it might have worked better. But you're right, like Natalie Portman can do some great work. And I was saying when we were watching it, if you've seen Leon the Professional, there's better chemistry, and like, this is weird, like has a better relationship with her co-star in that film, and like they have a really charming and sweet relationship, and she's acting at 12 in that film, and yet there is nothing as an adult with her acting with Hayden Christensen. Like, there is no sparks, there's nothing there. No, because she can act, she can do a great job, but it just didn't work in this film.
Yeah. I think what we've seen too, especially in recent years, is that when people come back to watch the prequel series, the prequel trilogy, I should say, while the sequel trilogy is being released, people have gone back and have actually looked at Hayden Christensen's performance and have actually appreciated what he tried to do. Because obviously when these films came out originally, everyone was like, oh, this guy's a terrible actor. What the hell is he doing? He's not the greatest actor, but he definitely has some talent. And I think it's very clear now that it wasn't entirely his fault, the delivery of Anakin Skywalker in some scenes. He actually really did try. And I've got to say, I actually do feel really bad for him. And I think this is why now people really want to see him return into the Star Wars universe. People actually really like him. And
I think what it is, just to add to that point, is that people like I was expecting to hate this film because everyone on the internet shits all over. Like, it's fun to hate on this movie.
Yeah.
And for all the reasons we've brought up, there's some legitimate reasons to hate on it. But I think in light of how bad some of the new films have been, this one looks like a goddamn masterpiece in some scenes. And that's what it is. People are nostalgic because the new Star Wars, like, there is more character development, and Obi-Wan is a far more charismatic character and better written in this film than any other character in the new films is, by far.
I agree.
And people are nostalgic for it and people are nostalgic for Hayden Christensen because he gave a good performance. He was well written, and even he, with some of his wooden lines and the famous "I hate sand" line, he is still better in this film than and more interesting than a lot of the people in the new ones.
I agree.
Which is something we'll get more into when we get to The Force Awakens, but. Something
Rogue
I will
One,
mention,
I'm looking at you.
Yeah, something I will mention is I feel like in the newer films, they really rely on characters working together and not standing on their own 2 feet. Whereas in the prequel series, some of these characters, like Obi-Wan, can have scenes by himself and still be an interesting character. Whereas, like, which you'll eventually get to, is that, like, I feel like in The Last Jedi, Daisy Ridley by herself or Finn by himself aren't compelling characters.
I actually 100% agree with that. 100%. Yeah, like it actually it struck me that Ewan McGregor really carries this film. Without him, I don't think this would have worked. Or the entire prequel trilogy, there would have been almost nothing salvageable about it without him.
I agree. Yeah, and scenes too with like Samuel L. Jackson as Mace Windu is good. Like at the beginning as well, and he's talking to Palpatine. He's like, we're keepers of the peace, not soldiers. Like just the delivery of those lines too. Like he's a very compelling character when he's on screen, and he's got some very cool scenes. He obviously cuts off Jango Fett's head.
Yeah, he does.
Savage. And just the look he gives back to Count Dooku. You can tell he's there for business.
Brutal.
One more thing too, is that one of the first scenes just after the assassination attempt on Padme, they're talking with Chancellor Palpatine. And he looks so evil. Like his makeup, he's got like a bright red underneath his eyelids. Intentionally, they have made him look as menacing as possible. And I remember like as a kid, when these movies were coming out, how like confused I was because I was like, is Palpatine the Emperor?
Yeah.
Like no one knew.
Yeah.
And then, I remember getting a Lego set when I was young, and it was like on the Lego set, it had a description of what was in the set.
Yeah.
And it actually said Emperor Palpatine. And I was like, what? That makes
that is so cool.
Yeah. When I was young. So,
because I can't actually remember when it came out because I was way too young to think of it. But they didn't actually say that the Chancellor was the Emperor, did they, when these movies came out?
I think in the original trilogy, the word Palpatine is not mentioned. He's just always referred to as the Emperor.
Yes.
So, yeah, like Palpatine, that name meant nothing to anyone when the prequel trilogy came out.
Yeah.
Of course, I mean, the same actor, Ian McDiarmid.
Yeah.
We knew Ian McDiarmid played the Emperor, and we know he plays, so you could put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there was that real, like, it was exciting trying to figure that out, I remember, when I was a kid.
Yeah. And what was interesting, too, is actually having him in the background with Count Dooku playing this Sith Lord that no one knew about as well. What I've actually would have really liked to have seen is just a little bit more of a relationship between that Sith Lord character, Darth Sidious, and Count Dooku. I would have liked to see a little bit more screen time with them together, because I'm pretty sure even Darth Maul and Sidious actually had more time together, but we didn't get that much with Count Dooku and Sidious on screen.
Only one scene at the end.
Only
of
one
the
scene
film.
at the end, and that was it. So you didn't know till the end that Count Dooku was actually working under Darth Sidious.
I actually think that undermines some of it, because I think the potentially interesting scene was that Count Dooku was a rogue Jedi, but not necessarily on the dark side. They set Count Dooku up when he has that conversation with Obi-Wan as being someone who might have like legitimate criticisms of the Republic and the way the Jedis had influenced it. But then, of course, it just turns out that he's just the dark side, and there's nothing more to it. So
what's actually kind of it does make it out to be very black and white kind of in the end with Count Dooku, that he's just completely dark side, and but what I will say is another audiobook I came reading off was Star Wars Jedi Lost, and it was about actually how Count Dooku was a Padawan and how he went through his training with Master Yoda. And it actually, at the end of the audiobook, for spoilers if you don't know what happens, but it actually does show why he leaves the Jedi Order. It's a really fascinating story, and he leaves the Order for very legitimate reasons. And what that audiobook does, it actually shows a lot of depth to him, and which is kind of really disappointing, because these movies didn't do that. But he's actually quite a very complex character when you listen to that audiobook. So I wish, looking back on it now, the movies did him a little bit more justice and showed a little more depth with him, because it does make him very one-sided, and he's like, together we can destroy the Sith. But it wasn't all about that with him. There was a lot more to him, and unfortunately, obviously we'll get into it in episode 3, but yeah, with Count Dooku in the prequel trilogy, there's just not much to do with him. He's literally in the end scene of Attack of the Clones. He's at the start of Revenge of the Sith, and that's it, which is really disappointing, because he is a very interesting character.
And the actor that they casted, he is incredible. And like Roland
Christopher
said,
Lee.
yeah, he steals every scene that he's in. He's just awesome.
So sad that he passed away recently.
It is.
But yeah, he was amazing. Yeah.
Do you guys have any final thoughts that you'd like to add to this review?
No, I'm ready to give this bad boy a score.
Oh, yeah. Ellen, do you have anything you'd like to say?
For some reason, this film made me really excited to rewatch the original trilogy. There was something about it that I was like, I can't wait to watch A New
It's
Hope.
the magic, man.
We
It's
get
got the Star
closer.
Wars magic.
Yeah,
It's
especially-
true.
Yeah, especially when they were on the farm where Luke eventually grows up. You're like, oh my God, I'm so excited for this.
Yeah. Oh, and we didn't even mention that scene where they actually go and meet Owen Lars as Anakin's stepbrother, which obviously ties it all together. But yeah, even that was cool. They were cool characters. I didn't mind that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
The coolest characters. The MVPs.
The MVPs
of this movie.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
Lars family.
Yeah, and I will mention too, like the whole scene with him burying his mother as well is a good scene when he comes back, and just that look on his face when he's carrying his dead mum in his hands wrapped up. I mean, that's tough.
He's good
Yeah.
at being angsty.
He
Given
is.
that,
He's
Hayden
very good at
Christensen.
angsty, and you know what? I think that landed very well. Maybe not so much as the charismatic stuff, but the very angsty scenes. Hayden Christensen is good at executing.
Actually, have you guys seen Jumper? Because that was the only film he did after
Yeah,
Star
it
Wars.
was shit.
No, I haven't actually seen it. Yeah.
I
With
feel like
Rachel
he was more
Bilson.
charming in that film than he was in Star Wars.
They tried to make him a teenage heartthrob, but it just
didn't
wasn't
work.
happening. No.
Yeah.
No.
Scores?
Yep.
Start with you, really.
I'm going to give this bad boy a 7.5 out of 10 off the back of a 5 out of 10 for The Phantom Menace. This really improves everything. Loved it. Thought it was good. 7.5. Loved watching it again.
Yeah, Ellen.
I was also going to give it a 7.5 for the
Gangster.
same reason. Because I gave Phantom Menace a 6 last time. So
There you go.
1.5 better.
Now wait, we should say 1.5 better. And you gave this film a
6.5.
6.5. You gave Phantom Menace.
I gave Phantom Menace a 6. I gave it a 6.5.
Yep, fair
Yeah.
enough. So shade better for you.
Just a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, just a little bit. The Padme's character still, yeah, absolutely annoyed me. Like, that at least shedded half a point off.
I understand. Fair enough.
Legitimate. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a legitimate criticism.
Yeah. All right. I think that about wraps it up. Thank you very much for listening in to our Attack of the Clones review. We hope you enjoyed. Please let us know what you thought of the movie. If you've seen it recently, let us know if we're absolutely crazy or we've hit the nail on the head. Thank you for listening. You can
We'll be
also
back next
follow.
week, by
We
the
will
way.
actually be back. But before that, you can also find us on Instagram at Starbros Podcast, and you can find us at Facebook, facebook.com/Starbros Podcast. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.